Alhamdulillah wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So we left off previously where we talked about the person who's leading someone else, and we talked about who can lead who, and talked a bit about like prayer and congregation. So where we're going to pick up today is we're going to pick up with cutting the salah, or like shortening the salah, qasr, which is shortening the salah, and also there's the bringing it together, so bringing the two salah, praying them all in one time, from the asr and dhuhr, and also the maghrib and isha, like praying them in either one of those times, praying both of them together. These are two different things, and there are some slight differences between when you can do each one of these, so they shouldn't be understood as everything applies to all of them. There's some exceptions with each one of them, and there's differences. So we'll talk about that inshallah. So the going back to what the Mutn says, and so Shujaa قال رحمه الله فصلا ويجوز للمسافر قصر الصلاة رباعية بخمس شرائط. And so he says, of course, it's permissible with 5 conditions for him to break one of the, of course, he says ruba'iyya, which means, of course, one of the salat, that's 4. Anything that's less than 4, it doesn't get cut or shortened. It's only the 4. And so then he says here, أن يكون, this is of the first of these 5 conditions, is the first one is أن يكون سفره في غير معصية. So this is the first condition. So he needs to make sure that his safar, like wherever he's going in this journey, is something that isn't sinful. Like, of course, we're all sinners. We're all going to sin sometimes. We're gonna sin on our journeys. But the point of our journey is not to do something evil. So if someone's going to Las Vegas to gamble, alright, they can't shorten their prayer, because the rukhas, they only go for people that are like, they don't go for someone who's going to sin. So someone who's going to sin, he can't take harukhas when he's basically going on a journey to go disobey Allah. That only comes for someone who is in obedience, or that's at least not doing something wrong. So this is the first condition, that is not fi ghayri ma'siyah. And so, of course, like the safar itself needs to be mubah. It needs to be permissible, or some type of ta'ah. And so this is the first thing. And of course, if he does something wrong on the safar, then this is that's one thing. But if the safar is for doing wrong, then that's another thing. That's where he can't do it. And so the next thing he says, وَأَن تَكُونَ مَسَافَتُهُ سِتَّةَ عَشَرَ فَرْسَخًا. And so he says, and that the masafa, which is the distance. The distance needs to be, he says, 16, سِتَّةَ عَشَرَ فَرْسَخًا, 16 farsakh. And a farsakh is like, this is a certain, like he says here if you look at the bottom here, he said in Tusawi, like 81 kilometers. Like all of this, the sitta ta'asha, it equals about 81 kilometers, or which is like 50 and 1/3 miles. So 50 miles and 1/3. So if you have so the distance needs to be 50 miles and 1/3, and this is exact. And so it needs to be this length of a distance, and of course, like, this is because we don't have, when it comes to rukhas, the general principle with the Shafi'i madhab is that we only do what is narrated for us to take for a break. We don't take any extra break except what is narrated. And of course, like safar, the only safar that we know that the Prophet ﷺ did this was something that was this length. That was this length of when he would make the qasr, that it was at least this length. And so as far as like any other safar, we don't have an example of him doing that with a small, like say someone goes outside the city just a little bit and they come back. It's a safar. Like this isn't a long safar. So we only take it as the 50 and 1/3. So 50 miles and 1/3. So this is the first condition here. And then this is the second condition, that it's at least 50 miles. And this is one way. This is not both ways. So the 50 and 1/3 miles is going one way. So if we say, round trip, it's going to be 51 miles. Let's say 51 miles, or what is it, 82 kilometers, 81 kilometers. So if we say a round trip, it's going to be 82 kilometers, say. But one way, it's only 41. So in this case, we wouldn't be able to do that, because it needs to be this length. And and it needs to at least to be this length. And if it's not this length one way, then we can't break it, and we can't count both ways. So we're going on a day trip that goes out 20 miles, and we're coming back 20 miles. And so it needs to at least, it needs to be 50 miles and a third to the place, the destination that we're traveling. And so that's the important thing here. And also, someone needs to have like a purpose with their traveling, and I'll mention that. But if someone's just wandering and they don't know where they're wandering, in this case, they don't get it. They don't get this. It's only for someone who has the purpose when they're traveling. So if someone's just wandering, he doesn't know where he's going, but eventually he reaches 53 miles, or like 50 miles and a third, and he gets there, then in this case, it's not going to, he doesn't get to do that, because he doesn't know his purpose. He doesn't know where he was going. So he needs to know where he's going, and then he would know, once he has a purpose with his traveling, then he can have that. But for the wanderer, that doesn't happen. And this would be page 75. Oh, yeah. And so this is, and then after this, so we talked about the first of the conditions to making qasr or salah is that the safar is not for the purpose of sin. في غير معصية. And then also he says وأن تكون مسافته 16 فرسخا, and this is the second one, that it needs to be this length, which is 50 miles and a third, or 81 kilometers. And so then the third of these conditions of the 5 is وأن يكون مؤديا, that he needs to be mu'addiya, which means that he's in the time for that salah. للصلاة الرباعية. So he needs to be at the time when he's actually, he can't be making up this salah. If he's making up a salah that was at the time of hadr, say he missed the salah before, he forgot about it, and so he's making it up, and he can't break the, say he missed the dhuhr, and now he's in asr, and now he's safar, and now he's on a journey, but at that time, that was not at the journey. It was supposed to be 4 at that time. He's got to pray at 4. He can't break it now because he's not in the time for it to be broken. And he's praying it outside of its time. He needs to be at a time when he's praying it in that way. And so he says, وَأَنْ يَكُونَ مُؤَدِّيًا لِلصَّلَاةِ الرُّبَاعِيَّةِ. So it needs to be at a time, muaddi, like ada is when someone does the action in the time that is allotted for it. And qada is doing it doing the action after the time that's allotted. After the time is finished, now he does the action. This is called qada. And so these are 2 different terms, and these are mentioned in usul, but that's where he says muaddiyan, which is that he's doing it in the time that is allotted for it. وَأَنْ يَنْوِيَ الْقَصْرَ. So then the next one of these, the 4th one, وَأَنْ يَنْوِيَ الْقَصْرَ مَعَ الْإِحْرَامِ. And so this is the 4th of this is that he has the intention to make qasr, to shorten the salah while he's doing the ihram. So when he's at the beginning of his salah, he intends that he's doing qasr. If he doesn't intend, then the basis is he's praying it complete. So if he forgot to intend and he started the salah, he's praying it complete. He has to finish it out complete. He can't bring that niyyah afterwards. That niyyah needs to be there at the beginning. If he doesn't have that niyyah, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّةِ. So if he doesn't have that niyyah there, then it won't carry him through. He needs to have it at that time for him to make the qasr, because the basis is that it's for. And so this is important. He has the qasr, the intention for qasr at the beginning, and then the next one, the 5th of these is وَأَنْ لَا يَتَأَتَّى بِمُقِيمٍ. يَأْتَمَّ بِمُقِيمٍ. So this is the last of these that he mentions here, is that he's not being led by someone who's praying it complete. And so this is narrated that Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, he said that he was asked about what's the deal ما بال المسافر يصلي ركعتين إذا انفرد وأربعا إذا تم بمقيم. And so he says, what's the deal with the musafir? That he prays 2 if he's by himself, and he prays 4 if he's being led with the muqim, like someone who is a resident. And so he says, فقال Ibn Abbas رضي الله عنهما فقال تلك هي السنة. So he says that this is the sunnah. And of course, this is the form of, this is like the hadith, even though he says that this is sunnah, this is a way of saying that this is marfu'. And we'll talk about this inshallah in the future. But this is of the forms of saying it's marfu', because he says this is sunnah, that direct ascribing to the sunnah is a way that this is from the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is, if someone ever is led by someone who's muqim, and that person that's praying the muqim is of course he's praying it complete, and he needs to make sure that he prays the salat complete, and so there can't be a difference in the number between this person's praying shorter with someone who's praying more, and that's the sunnah. And even this is the same. Say you found the muqim, he's in the last rak'ah, he's sitting, he's making the tashahhud, and you go and you follow him. In this case, you still need to pray 4. Even if you're there for many amount, or 2 rak'ahs that he's left, you know that he only has 2, you still need to pray for it. This is the view of the Shafi'i madhab here. And also, of course, the view of Ibn Abbas. And so this is of them. And there's also another condition for it, that he left a couple of them out there, but one of the other conditions is that he makes sure that he breaks the barrier between him and the buildings of the town or village or city that he's in. So if he's in a town, village, or city, all of these buildings, he can't do qasr until he's reached outside of them. Even if he's doing he's going on the journey, but the Prophet ﷺ, he would make sure that before he would do qasr, he would at least leave the buildings. You would leave the buildings of like the town. And this is not a city limits. We're not looking at city limits. We're looking at the majmu'ah, or like the group of the buildings of like the actual settlement. Once someone leaves that, then they have left the town. So if you all know, like if you were to go, and Medina to Nasr is big, from like Medina to Nasr all the way to like Giza, like all of this, there's pretty much no break between buildings, and all of it would be considered one. But if I were to go from Medina to Nasr to like to Jamal al-Awwal, there's a big gap of building where there's no buildings between them. Or if I were to go to like Salam, and there's like some area, there's a big gap of no buildings, and then it's another build, and then it's another place. So this would be where I say if I'm traveling 50 some miles, then when I make this gap, as soon as I break the gap of the buildings, then I can do the qasr in the salah. But if I haven't done that, I can't do the qasr for salah. And the next thing he's going to talk about, he's talking about bringing them together. And this is a case where the qasr is different than the jama'. You can do jama' while you're still inside of the buildings of that place, if you're going on a journey. You can do jama' before you leave. But you can't do qasr until you've got past the buildings of that town or a settlement or whatever that is. So this is the important thing. Then this is one of the subtle differences. So jama' is a little more open than that. When it comes to qasr needs to be outside. And also like this is the person who's going in a like airport. So if you go to an airport, usually there's a break of buildings between you and the airport. So the airport takes a different ruling. Most of the time. Like this is generally, so like especially if you were to look at Cairo airport, if you go there, there's a whole break of buildings. Like there's a whole place. So this is not like you're in the same city. You've left the city. So you can do qasr there as well as the jama'. The same thing. Most of the airports are like this, where there's no buildings around for a while, and they're separated from the buildings of the other people. And so this is treated like a separate city. And of course, we're not looking at city limits. We're looking at the actual buildings themselves. And so the next thing he says here, rahimahullah, he says, وَيَجُوزُ لِلْمُسَافِرِ أَنْ يَجْمَعَ بَيْنَ الظُّهْرِ وَالْعَصْرِ في وقت أيهما شاء. And so he says here, وَبَيْنَ الْمَغْرِبِ وَالْعِشَاءِ في وقت أيهما شاء. So he says that it's permissible, يجوز للمسافر, which is of course going on that journey. That is of course like this would be like the longer journey, which is the 50 some miles. أن يجمع بين الظهر والعصر في وقت أيهما شاء. And this is for he can combine dhuhr and asr in any of the 2 times that he wishes. وبين المغرب والعشاء في وقت أيهما شاء. And also between these 2, between Maghrib and Isha, in any one of these 2 times. So this is permissible for him to do when he's doing that. And so of course, even if he's planning to go on a trip, and he's going to leave a little after dhuhr, he can pray dhuhr and asr before he leaves. But he has to pray, if he hasn't left the buildings, he needs to pray them full. but he can pray them together. So he can do taqdeem. And then also if he wants to do ta'khir, then he can do that as well with the other one. But there's a couple conditions for there's two types, of course, of jama'. There's either taqdeem, which is praying it early, or ta'khir, which is praying it late. So praying it in the other time, I mean. And so the conditions for praying it early, there's more conditions here. And of the conditions for someone to pray early is one, they need to pray it in order. So they can't put asr before dhuhr. They need to pray it in order. This is one of the conditions. Also, they need to have the niyat al-jama'. And while they're praying the first, at the time of them praying the first one, they need to have the niyyah during the first salat that they're doing jama', that they're gonna put these two together. So they need to have this at the beginning of the time. And then the third one is that they need to do this one after another without a break. And so, like when the Prophet ﷺ, when he did this, he would there was no break between the people. Like the people weren't doing they weren't praying like sunnah between them or having like a long break for tasbih and all of the other adhkar. No, it's like one right after another, and there should not be a break between one or the other. And if there is a break, the Shafi'i madhab is that this person can't do jama'. If there's a long break, like what you would know by urf, like normally what you would consider a long break between the end of this salah and the next one, then you can't do jama'. Then you have to bring it because it needs to be at the same time and it needs to be put together, and you have to have that niyyah and whatnot. So these are the three conditions here for someone to do that jam', which is the taqdeem, which is doing it first. Now for the ta'khir, there's one condition, and there's only one condition for it to be considered valid, and this is niyyah. You need to have the niyyah during the time of the original one to do it. So you need to have and there's also another masala, I don't know if we've gone over it, but basically when the time for any salah comes in, once you know that the time for the salah comes in, you need to have the niyyah to pray that salah. Yeah, we would say azm. Because there's a difference between like niyyah. Niyyah is something that's connected with the actual action, but azm is an intention to do something, a firm intention to do it. So if the adhan comes for dhuhr, and you don't have an intention to pray dhuhr, and you know the time is there, you don't have any of this intention, you would be a sinner. This is the view of the Shafi'i madhab. Yes, you're able to pray it at any time you want within the time of dhuhr, or like with in this case, but you need to have the intention. This is in every salah. You need to have the intention once the time for the salah comes and you're aware of that, then you need to have the intention that you're going to pray the salah. So without that intention, if this person were to die without this, he would be dying as a sinner. But if he had the intention to pray it, and then he died, he would not be dying. He would not be dying as someone who is leaving off the salah. So this is something that it's a view of the Shafi'i madhab, and it's something that Imam Shirazi he talks about. What he talks about is the amr, is it obligatory on someone right away? And this is one of the things he says: if someone was to have the intention or not have the intention to do what Allah told them to do when the time comes, then they would be in a sinful state. They're not in imtithal, like they're not in a state of submission and obedience. So in this case, he needs to have the intention during that first time. He needs to have the intention to pray it afterwards, that he's going to pray the jama'. So say I'm on a journey and the maghrib comes in and I don't have any intention to do ta'khir, and then the time for maghrib leaves. That's qada. This is not jama' anymore. This is qada. I have a qada on me and I just missed the salah. As opposed to if I had the intention, then I was and I knew when Maghrib came, okay, Maghrib comes, I'm just going to pray this when Isha comes. Okay, that's fine, but I have the intention. Without that, otherwise it's qada. And this is, of course, the person leaving that off is, it would be like a sinner. Of course, if he's forgetful, that is one thing. Of course, the person who's forgetful is not held accountable, but it would not be considered like a debt. It would be considered qada, because it would be prayed outside of its time, because he didn't come with a condition for that. And also, like this, we'll talk about later on. We'll talk about in Siyam, like for someone who's fasting. For someone to fast, this is also the same as we talked about this long journey. This long journey is the same thing that allows someone to break their fast. Allows someone to break their fast. But if they're able to fast, then it's better for them to fast. So, like if they're able to do it, then and it's not a hardship on them, then it's better for them to fast, especially like Ramadan. This is because you get that the time of Ramadan is something that has a special characteristic as opposed to making it up afterwards. But of course, the person who's able to do it, it's better for them to do it inside, but they're allowed to break it up. And of course, if it's hard for them, then of course it's better for them to break their fast. Yeah. Wallahu ta'ala. Any questions about any of these that we mentioned here so far? Yeah.
Oh, you mentioned that if he misses salah and then he does safar, he can't do qasr.
He can't do qasr to that salah that he missed while he's in hadr, while he was muqim. While he was a resident, he can't do qasr to this salah. This salah is as it is.
Yeah, but that doesn't apply to if he's musafir and then he misses salah, he can still do qasr.
Yeah, because he was safar. Yeah. So if he's making up a salah that's safar, yeah, you can do it. And of course, he doesn't go into that detail, but this is in later books he talks about that. Yeah. And then also he says here, the last part here, ويجوز للحاضر في المطر أن يجمع بينهما في وقت الأولى منهما. And so he says here, and that it's permissible for the person that is resident, للحاضر, for the resident muqim, في المطر, when there's a time of rain or precipitation, يجمع بينهما في وقت الأولى منهما. So, and this is, of course, there's a couple conditions for this, but it's permissible for him to do jama' and between these two in the first time. He can't do it at the last time. He can't do the ta'khir, but he can do taqdeem. And this is for the person who is it has to be for someone who is in an actual masjid, or a masjid or a place where like a musalla, that people actually come to make musalla for him to do this. And it needs to be, the actual rain needs to be coming down. There actually needs to be rain at the time, precipitation, the same thing would be snow, but it needs to be coming down at that time. And then he can do the jama'. He can't do qasr though. He can do jama', so he can pray both of these together. And this is for the people that would have a hardship coming back to the masjid. So if maybe there's rain and whatnot, this would be hard for people to come back to the masjid after they prayed. So for them to get the congregation, the benefit of the congregation, they can do jama' here. And that is the way they can pray. But it's only for taqdeem. It's not for ta'khir. And also of some of the things that are mentioned here, and I'll just mention one thing briefly. But some people they take there's a hadith in hadith in Muslim, Sahih Muslim, that talks about this particular masala, and then one of them says that it was without matar, that the Prophet ﷺ used to pray these two together between these two without matar, and he says without matar. And this is a hadith that some people have taken and used it to say that it's permissible for people to do jama' anytime they wish, without a reason, as long as they don't make it an adah, as long as they don't make it a habit. And this is a hadith that they will use this. And yes, the hadith, and it's in Sahih Muslim, but to say without matar, this is a thing that's disputed. There's little wordings inside of hadith in Muslim and also in Bukhari. There's wordings here and there that the scholars will talk about, and this is of those places. But some of them will also say, then we would also have, there'd be a lot of ta'wil that we'd use in this, because we know that Allah made the salah kitaban mawquta, that the salah is upon us at these certain times, and there's no reason for us to ever take the time out of its take the salah out of its time. So this is one of those hadiths that it's not permissible. And of course, the Shafi'i opinion is that it's not permissible to do this, even for the person who's sick. This is something that's almost the Shafi'i has a big the Shafi'i madhab. There's a big discussion. Someone who's sick and has a hardship, can they do jama'? And of course, the stronger opinion is that they can do jama' if they're sick and there's a serious hardship. But this is where the khilaf is. It's not for the person who wants to do jama' whenever they feel like it, And this is something that someone should be mindful of. And yes, it is it's a popular thing that kind of runs around. I'm pretty sure people have heard about it, that they'll just do jama' whenever they want. And of course, this is not something that this hadith that they take. Yes, it's in Sahih Muslim, but but the majority of the other overwhelming evidences point to that this hadith is mu'awwal. Like it has to take some type of ta'wil, because this hadith goes against like the qat'i, like the vast majority of evidences. And so this is one thing I'll just bring that up here, but this is not of the times that it's permissible for someone to just do jam' whenever they want. And of course, like the safar is another thing. It's like a short safar. This is a difference of opinion. There's a difference of opinion about the short safar, like someone who's traveling, but they're not traveling a long journey, but they're traveling. Can they do jama'? And this is a opinion, like an opinion that is in the Shafi'i madhab. But the strongest of the opinions is that that's not permissible for them to do that. But there's a strong strongness to that, strength to that opinion. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. So he's going to go into the next thing, and he's going to talk about what is like that, which is Salat al-Jum'ah. Did you have a question?
Yeah. At what point do you become a musafir?
The musafir is when you intend. It's when you intend. But of course, to do the qasr, there's an extra condition, which is to leave the buildings. Yeah.
So if I'm, like, say I have a flight at 5 or 10 p.m., can I do jam' of dhuhr in the morning when I'm still at home? And Asr.
Oh, but you haven't left or done any traveling.
No.
No, you need to travel in one of the times. You'd actually need to be traveling one of the times. Wallahu ta'ala. Yeah. So like I'm going to travel after, like assuming that Dhuhr and Asr, you're going to still be muqim for both of them.
Yeah.
You're still going to be in the same makan. Yeah. In this case, like you would need to pray them separately. Allah ta'ala. I'll go and research on that, inshallah. But it would be once you actually travel that you can have that ability. In one of them.
Sorry. Let's say, okay, you're traveling, you're home, but you went to the airport, so you're on the path.
That's you started the journey. Yeah. But if you're still sitting at home, you're just getting stuff ready. No. That's the difference. Like you haven't even traveled. You haven't got outside of your door. If you got outside your door and you're running around doing the last errands before you're going, okay, you're late. In one of the times, one of the two times. Wallahu ta'ala. Faslun, and so he says here, Faslun, وَشَرَائِتُ وُجُوبِ الْجُمُعَةِ سَبْعَةُ أَشْيَاء. So here's going to talk about Jumu'ah, and of course Jumu'ah is one of the greatest forms of us coming together in like a normal fashion. And so he's going to first talk about who is it obligatory upon. And so some of these the first three that he's going to say, it's the same thing as we talked about for Salah, who is Salah obligatory for, it's Jumu'ah. And then there's a couple extra conditions. So the first of these, he says, sabatu ashya, so there's 7. The first one is Islam. We talked about that he's Muslim, wal bulugh, that he's come of age, with one of those ways of coming of age. And also he says, wal aql, of course, like he's sane. And so these are the 3, and we talked about these for Salat itself. And so the next ones, these are the ones that are added. Wal hurriya, so this is for the person who is free, and of course like that applies to all of us these days. Alhamdulillah. Wal dhukuriya, and also that we're a man. So like the person is a man. So this is for wujub and Jumu'ah. And so like for it to be obligatory, the condition for it to be obligatory is that this person is a man. Also he says was sihha. And so this is a sihha, which means that he's like physically able. He's not in a sick state. Of course, if it's like a sickness where he's able to go and there's no hardship in going, he needs to go. But like this is like if he has a medical condition or something that makes it hard for him to go, or no one's there to help him go. In this case, then he's off the hook for this. And also the last thing he says here, wal istitan. And so al istitan is that someone is Istitan is the word that he uses here, and it's better for him to say muqim or iqama. It's better for him to say iqama here than istitan. And the reason for istitan means that someone is a permanent resident. It's like a permanent residency, that this person intends to be at this place like the whole year around, and he doesn't leave that place in general for any reason other than some necessity. Like if he has some necessity, or he's going to make a short journey or something somewhere else, but he's coming right back, this is his permanent residence, then this is what istitan is. And we'll talk about this in the next part of it. But it's better for him to say wal iqama. So and this is what Al-Khatib al-Shirbini rahimahullah, he said it's better, and he means iqama here, which means that this person is muqim. So this person is a resident. He's like he's not necessarily a permanent resident. So maybe this person's on a journey, but he's going to be here for like 10 days, and he plans to be here for more than 4 days, so he's muqim. So this person needs to go make Jum'ah, even though he doesn't have istitan, because istitan means that permanent residence. So iqam is the better word here. And and so the of the other conditions that he says here for the actual action itself, so like for Jum'ah itself, and there's a couple conditions for Jum'ah itself for it to be valid. And so of Jum'ah, he says here وَشَرَائِطُ فِعْلِهَا ثَلَاثَةٌ. And so, well, I'll go back to, there's one other thing I'll mention. He talks about iqama for the person who is say someone wants to go on a journey, and they want to go on a journey on Yom al-Jum'ah. They want to go visit somewhere, and they start their journey after Fajr. If they start their journey after Fajr, they need to, like, Jum'ah has become obligatory on them that day. They need to make that Jum'ah. So even if they are going on a journey, even though now they're no longer in Iqamah, from the beginning, from the break of Fajr, as soon as Fajr comes, they need to make this, they need to make a Jum'ah. Jum'ah has become obligatory on them with the becoming of Fajr. And so if someone knows that they can't make Jum'ah, if they travel, like if they're going to travel after Fajr, and they know they're not going to find a place to make Jum'ah, then it's haram for them to go make a Jum'ah, unless there's like some dire necessity. Like maybe there's a group that they won't be able to catch to go traveling. Maybe they're in a plane or something that they can't change the time or something. But if they're just going in a way that they can affect the time, then they need to make sure that they don't travel unless they can pray that Jum'ah that day. And so this is important for that person who is because he has iqamah during that time. With that time came in at Fajr, the break of Fajr. And this also for the other sunnah that we'll talk about for the sunnah that we talk about for like ghusl and whatnot. This comes at the break of Fajr. It's not before it. And so there's a couple things that are connected with that time in particular. And so the conditions for a Jum'ah actually to be valid. I got that.
This also means like you can't, like it would be haram to like time it that way.
Yeah.
Let's say if there was like a cheaper flight ticket on Friday, for example.
The flight ticket is different though, because you're going with a group that you won't be able to go with otherwise.
But like it's like part of the planning. Like you're still not even part of.
But they like the way that it's like there's a necessity. Even if it's cheaper, that's a necessity in and of itself. And you're going with a group that you can't necessarily go without them. But if you're gonna choose it, Allahu A'lam. Okay, so going back to here, so he talks about the conditions, وشرائط, and شرائط is the plural of sharita, and sharita a lot of times means like the shart. Sometimes it's kind of used in that way, but شرائط فعلها ثلاثة. So there's 3 conditions here for the actual action to happen. Like for Jum'ah to even be valid, there's 3 conditions here he mentions. And he says the first one, وأن تكون البلد مصرا أو قرية. And by Misr he means like a city. And qarya is like something that qara means like something istaqar. Like there's people that are like, no, it'd be like ijtima. Like qarya, it comes from the word like qara, which means like ijtama. And so like this place needs to be a place where there's people that are together. And of course there's also mentioned in the sunnah that there was no Jum'ah until there was 40 people in a place. Like there was 40 people in a place and then after there was that condition and like the buildings and whatnot, then in this case it can be prayed, like Jum'ah can be there. But it needs to be like a place. And if it's, say someone is they're traveling tents, like the Bedouins, they travel with tents and whatnot, but it's not an actual permanent building, there's no Jum'ah. And if they wanted to live as a Bedouin the whole life, maybe they never prayed Jum'ah, and there's no sin upon them. And it's like also known that the Prophet ﷺ, he was surrounded by Bedouins around him, and he never ordered them to come to Jum'ah, or that they need to pray Jum'ah. This is something, if they're in the city, then it becomes obligatory. If they're in the city or they can hear the sound of the adhan, and like a silence, if there was silence and someone gave the adhan, they could hear the sound of the adhan from that city, then they need to come to it. So it needs to be for the Jumu'ah itself. It needs to actually be inside of like a city limit, and like it needs to be inside of the city or a village where there's a group of people and there's actual buildings. So that's the one thing here. That's the first condition here. And then the second condition, he says, وَأَن يَكُونَ الْعَدَدُ أَرْبَعِينَ مِنْ أَهْلِ الْجُمُعَةِ. And so it also says here that there needs to be 40 people. He says min ahlil jum'ah, and here ahlil jum'ah he means mustawtinin, and this is mustawtin. This is the istitan that I talked about before. So the ahlul jum'ah are all the conditions that we talked about before. So like we talked about that this person's Muslim, he's baligh, he's sane, and he's a man. And also that he's a mustawtin. And this is the difference between mustawtin and iqama. So mustawtin here is the one that's intended. And so the mustawtin is a person that's a permanent resident. So if you have a bunch of people, a bunch of college students that are only there for the college year, and then they're leaving, they're going back home, and this is the only people that's in that Jumu'ah, it's not going to be valid. Because there's no actual permanent residence, and this is that. And the condition for this is that there needs to be 14 people, or there needs to be 40 people that are from the Ahlul Jumu'ah, and these are mustawtin, like they're actual permanent residents there. So this is could be like a problem with some like Jumu'ahs. If they're all of the people that are there's not 40 people. This is the Shafi'i method, of course, but there's not 40 people that are permanent residents. So this is one of the things that is the difference between iqama and istitan. And so like the mustawtin, which is a person that has istitan, that has a permanent resident, there needs to be 40 of these for that Jumu'ah to be valid. Of course, if someone's like, I've become a mustawtin here in Egypt, but of course, like maybe in like certain areas, that wouldn't be considered that, because I'd only go visit there sometimes.
The college student is there for most of the year.
But he's there for a portion of the year, and he plans da'iman, like he doesn't plan to permanently reside there. He plans to go back all the time. This is like a plan. It's not like he's set. Mm. So like he knows 3 months out of the year, or even like 2 months out of the year, he's going back to his family. And this is not like a permanent thing. He's just there for a reason, and he's going back. So he wouldn't be considered a mustawtin. Allah ta'ala.
And there are conditions for the iqama of the 4 days?
That's iqama, yes, the 4 days. The 4 days that he has the intention for 4 days to stay in that place. That's the iqama, and this makes it obligatory for him to go. But this is not the 40 that are counted for it to be valid. So he's obliged to go. He's got to go, but he's not of the 40 that make the Jumu'ah valid. Make sense? Yeah. So there's a difference here, and of course, like the Shafi'is, when it comes to Jumu'ah, they're a little more hardcore. If you look at some of the conditions, they will be the most cautious, or I'd say the most cautious when it comes to this. There's a couple other conditions he left out here, but this is of them. And so the next, so there needs to be 40. So sometimes you'll see that the masjid, the Asaf Shadid, sometimes there will be barely anybody inside the masjid. So there won't be like 40 people inside the masjid. There will be like 15 or 20. And then the khatib will start up the khutbah. Oh. This is the problem. In the Shafi'i madhab, this is the problem.
Do all 40 of them have to be present?
They got to be there at the beginning of the khutbah for the khutbah to be even valid. So if he starts off with the arkan of the khutbah, and there's not 40 people there's a problem.
Okay, so it's not just that they live in the city, they also have to be...
They got to be at that, there needs to be 40 people in the actual Jumu'ah itself. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, would I count as mustawtin here?
Are you here permanently? Until further notice?
I'm just here for studies.
You're here for studies until you finish, right?
Yeah.
Alright, yeah. You're here, yeah, inshallah.
Isn't that the same as okay?
A college student, he's there for studies, yes, but he's in his mind, he knows at every single break he gets, he's going back.
Okay.
That's why he's planning his return. He has the intention of going back. As a mustawtin, he doesn't plan to go back.
Well, if he
plans to go back somewhere in the long distance future, he doesn't know when, but he's here for like a permanent stay until future notice. Okay. Allah ta'ala.
Does that also mean that, let's say there's like a city of 60, but none of them really go to Jama'ah anyways? It's
obligatory for them, and the ones that don't go are sinners. And the person that doesn't make it valid for the other people is also a sinner for not making it valid for them. Yes, and their Jumu'ah is not valid either.
Okay.
This is the Shafi'i view. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So their Jumu'ah is not valid because the people didn't come. And of course, they are sinners for not commanding these people to come as well.
Okay.
So like the Amr bil Ma'ruf
But
wa
Jumu'ah,
Nahy
they're
anil
all
Munkar. Their Jumu'ah is no longer valid without the 40 people. So
But
they
they're
need to
not-
get all the 40 people to come first before they start.
But they're not held accountable for that.
The 40?
No, the people who are.
Everyone's held accountable for what they can do, but they are held accountable for Amr bil Ma'ruf.
Well, if
So-
there's 39 people, you're just waiting for the last guy to come. It doesn't come until like the
The time
running out.
almost finishes. Yeah, then they would pray at Dhuhr.
But you have to wait until like
Yeah, and it would be best for someone to go get that person. Yeah, and this would be obligatory on the community to go get those people to do that. Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahy anil Munkar.
So if
There's certain times when it becomes a communal obligation, of course, for the communal obligation to happen. And this is the 40. There's a huge debate with this number 40, where we get this, and the Khulasatul Qawl, like the end of this, the reason why 40. The reason 40 is because we have ijma', like Imam an-Nawawi talks about that there's ijma' that there needs to be a number. There's ijma' that there is a number. This is the ijma'. Sometimes there's differences of opinion, but all of those differences of opinion agree on something. All of them agree that there's a number. So what's this number? And so we have a bunch of different ahadith, and all of the hadith are weak that come into it. They're weak or they hold ta'wil. So like they're not clear cut in this matter. So like if you were to talk about, there's the hadith that the Prophet that comes in the tafsir from the tafsir of Surah Al-Jumu'ah, when it talks about when the Prophet ﷺ was standing and giving the khutbah, and then they heard the man who came for with tijara and whatnot, so they ran and left the Prophet ﷺ standing in the khutbah. So and then what's narrated in the hadith is that there was about 13, I believe it was either 13 or 11, 13 people that left and were still there. And so the Shafi'is, they say this isn't clear that they didn't come back and then they finished the Jumu'ah as 40. And then also there is a clear hadith that there was 40 people. And so we take this 40 because there's one clear hadith that's there, it wasn't there until there was 40. So we take the fact that there was 40 and we take this is the only number that we have any dalil for. And so anything else with all of this, we don't have dalil for any of the other numbers, we throw them away. And we take this 40 and this is all we take. And some people, they will hold on to a smaller number, such as the Malikiyah, they hold on to a smaller number. I believe like around 12 or 13 is the other number that has some weight to it. Wallahu ta'ala. But this is of the views. Were you talking? You had a question?
So if it's a small community of people, like let's say in the West, they never pray Jummah. It's never.
Yeah. If there's not 40 men
Yeah.
that are held accountable, that would be a part of the people of Jummah, then yeah, they don't pray Jummah.
They don't get any of the reward for Jummah.
And it wouldn't apply. They wouldn't get any punishment for it, but they wouldn't get necessarily, maybe Allahu A'lam.
Yeah.
Because if they used to pray Jummah, and if they were praying Jummah, and then they were prevented from praying Jummah for a sabab, then they would get the reward of what they used to do. This is from the other hadith that we mentioned before. The person who prays while he's sahih, and while he is a muqim, he prays like the nawafil and whatnot, and then he goes and he becomes sick or he becomes marid. He will get the reward as being sahih and muqim as he was before. So the person who has some type of ta'ah that he does, and then for whatever reason he has stopped from doing this, he still gets reward for it. So this would probably fall into the same category there.
How about just from pure like the yearning for it, like that one?
Now, of course, there's a longing for ibadah is ibadah, and he gets reward for that. Yeah. And of course, if someone wanted to follow like another one of these opinions, then it would be best for people to in the community to agree on opinion that they follow for themselves. For the community to be broken apart. One guy says, "I'm not coming to your Jummah, because I'm a Shafi'i." It'd be better for him to follow the community in this. Allah ta'ala.
And I've heard of this hadith that there was a man who wanted to make Hajj, but he didn't have the money. But he was for his yearn for it, he was given that anyways. Have you heard of this hadith?
I'm not for certain of this, but the basic concept. There's lots of hadiths that have this concept.
Okay.
Yeah, for like the person who desires, and the same thing for the person who's mujahid, the person who desires to go to jihad, and he talks to himself and he wants to die in jihad. If he's serious about this, then Allah will give him the reward of being mujahid. will give him the reward of shahada. And this is, of course, there's many hadiths about this basic meaning. Wallahu ta'ala alam. So this is the 40. There needs to be 40 people that are permanent residents. This is for the Jumu'ah to be valid. This is the view of the Shafi'i madhab. And so the next one that he says here of the conditions for Jumu'ah is, he says, وَأَنْ يَكُونَ الْوَقْتُ بَاقِيًا فَإِنْ خَرَجَ الْوَقْتُ أَوْ عُدِمَتْ الشُّرُوطُ سُلِّيَتْ الظُّهْرَ. So he says here that the time for it needs to be there needs to be time left for it. So if the time runs out, then they would. So he says فَإِنْ خَرَجَ الْوَقْتُ. And so if the time runs out, or عُدِمَتْ الشُّرُوطُ. So if there's not enough people to pray this, سُلِّيَتْ الظُّهْرَ. And so then it's prayed as dhuhr. So if any of these conditions are missing, then it would be prayed as dhuhr. And so these are the conditions that he mentions here. And there's more conditions that are later on in other books. So you'll see that there's a few more conditions, such as that there can only be like each city only has one Jumu'ah that goes on, and they all need. And the first Jumu'ah is the only one that's counted, and the other Jumu'ahs are all invalid. This is one of the ones you'll find in like the later books of the Shafi'i madhab. And this is very hard. It's impossible logistically for us to come together and miss it. Like think about the amount of people that go to Jumu'ah and they have to be in the one place. So this was one of the views of Imam Shafi'i, but this is one of the views that is held strongly in the madhab. But of course it's of the views we can't hold. There's no possible way. It's logistically impossible. So this is of the other ones. There's a couple other small details of this that you'll find in later books. So the next one he talks about is the actual khutbah itself, or like the Jumu'ah. What is the Jumu'ah itself composed of? So he says the Jumu'ah, وَفَرَائِدُهَا فَرِيضَةٌ. That's the plural of faridah. وَفَرَائِدُهَا ثَلَاثَةٌ. So like this would also be like the fara'id is also like arkan. These are pretty interchangeable. He usually uses fara'id instead of arkan, but they're interchangeable here. The first of them, khutbatani. So the first two is the two khutbahs, and he mentions a couple things in them. One, yakumu fihima wa yajlisu baynahuma. So this is two of the things that he mentions here is that he stands in the khutbah. He needs to be standing. He can't be sitting. And also he needs to sit between the two to separate these two. This is a part of the separation of these two. And of course this comes from the sunnah. And one of the basis things when it comes to the khutbah in general, all of it is based on what is narrated from the Prophet ﷺ. We take this and we make sure that this is how it is done. We never veer off of this. And with the khutbah in general, this is, or in particular, this is something that is very strict, held to what is narrated. For what is done in it. And so he didn't mention here there's arkan for the khutbah itself. And the arkan for the khutbah, for both of these khutbah, is that they have, for each one of them, they need to have hamdulillah. So there needs to be some time that the khatib, he says alhamdulillah, inna alhamdulillah, nahmadullah, or shay mithadak, or something like this. He needs to have this type of praising Allah in it, in the hamd. And also the arkan, they should be in Arabic, unless someone is completely unable to say alhamdulillah, of course. But all of these arkan, they should be in Arabic. Also as-salatu ala nabi. So he needs to have wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad. So something of this sort, he needs to have this, as well as he needs to have wasiyah bit taqwa. So he needs to encourage the people to fear Allah. And so this is something that needs to be in each one of the two khutbahs. Both of them need to have these in them. And then also it needs to have the ayah. It needs to have an ayah that is recited in one of them. So one of the two khutbahs, there needs to be an ayah from the Quran, any ayah. ثُمَّ نَظَرَ. Alright, this would be enough for someone to have completed something. And so like just one ayat needs to be in one of the khutbahs. And of course, like if someone were to recite, as the Prophet ﷺ would recite like the beginning of Surah An-Nisa or something of this sort, this accomplishes more than just that. And it accomplishes the wasiyah bi taqwa and whatnot. And so the ayah is also a part of this. And of course an ayah can't be translated. There's no translating ayat. And it has to be in Arabic. And also a dua lil mu'mineen. And so in general there needs to be some type of dua for the mu'mineen or mu'min, like in general, for like the basis of mu'min. like all of them. And so these are the things that need to be done in one of them. And of course, this would be like at the end is the time that's normally done. And this is the arkan. And also sometimes there's a problem with some people that are in the West. They will translate everything and they don't say anything in Arabic. The whole khutbah. This is problematic. They need to at least have, like, of course, alhamdulillah. They need to at least have this. All of these arkan, they need to be in Arabic. Of course, as I mentioned, the Quran can only be in Arabic. But all of these, they need to be in Arabic. And without that, like this khutbah is invalid. And this is important for the khutbah to be mindful of this. Of course, like some of the views, I believe the Hanafi view is that all of it has to be, like the whole entire khutbah, everything in it needs to be in Arabic. Because it's like salah, and salah should be in Arabic. And like recently, people have talked about, okay, it's okay for there to be stuff that's not in Arabic inside of the khutbah. And this is okay, but the actual arkan needs to be in Arabic. Wallahu ta'ala alam. And it's also a good point for someone to get exposed to Arabic. Say, like someone's overseas, and they've never heard Arabic in their life. You know, like how are they going to get exposed to Arabic? When are they going to hear Arabic? They'll hear it in the khutbah. And then if someone does like the khutbah and part of it in Arabic and then some of it in English or something, or do all of it in Arabic, this will give them exposure. I remember hearing Arabic for the first time in khutbah, and it was a great experience, and after a while I could pick up words and whatnot. This is something that brings people close to the language of the Quran and the Sunnah. So this is something that they should do, and then people shouldn't be scared to use a language that's foreign. And of course, the Arabic language is the language of every Muslim. It should be the language of every Muslim. So these are the arkan of the khutbah itself, and of course breaking it up with the sitting in between. And then he says, وَأَن تُصَلَّى رَكَعَتَيْنِ فِي جَمَاعَةٍ. And so then the last part here, that is of these three major things. So we have the two khutbahs, it's 1, 2, and then also tusalli rak'ataini fi jama'ah. So he needs to the people need to pray the 2 rak'ahs in jama'ah. And of course, the person who we talked about before, that the one who's being led in prayer, he needs to have the intention that he's being led in prayer. And that's not the imam itself. The imam doesn't need to have this intention, but all of the people this time, all of the people need to have the intention that they're doing it in jama'ah as well as the imam. Yeah, and if it doesn't have the intention of jama'ah, then their jama'ah is not valid. They need to have this intention when they start the prayer, and so this is important. And that this is 2 rak'ahs, okay, and in jama'ah. And so he's going to talk about some of the other adab around this after that. And so he says, وَهَيْئَاتُهَا أَرْبَعُ خِصَالٍ. And like there's 4 things or like parts of this that are highly recommended. Of course, there's more than this, but he gives 4 of them here. He says al-ghusl wa tandeef al-jasad wa lubs al-thiyab al-bid wa akhdhu al-dhufri wa at-tib. And so he says here, of the 4 things that are good for someone to do is the ghusl. And of course, the ghusl is something that a lot of the scholars have said is obligatory for someone when they come to ghusl, because of the general command of the Prophet ﷺ. We have that whoever comes to Jummah, فَلْيَغْتَسِلْ. And so, like, of course, then there's that command. And the command in general necessitates wujub, but the thing that makes it outside of wujub is that the Prophet ﷺ, he said that whoever makes ghusl, then they have done and then good. And if somebody makes or whoever has made wudu, فَبِهَا وَنِعْمَتْ. So like then this is good. وَمَنْ اغْتَسَلَ فَهُوَ أَفْضَلُ. And so like to say then whoever does the ghusl, then فَهُوَ أَفْضَلُ proves that the person who left it, he was leaving something that was just better. Like that afdaliyah, this is a thing that pulls it away from being obligatory, and saying that this is something that is sunnah for someone to do, and it's very highly recommended sunnah. And of course, like the fact that someone should wash their body every 7 days at least is highly encouraged, if not obligatory. And so this is the first thing. Of course, when we talk about the ghusl from janaba, the purpose of this is ta'abbud. Like this is, of course, maybe you're cleaning yourself in some way, but the main purpose of it is to ta'abbud. Here, this ghusl is for tandeef. This is the reason that we understand this reason is because when we come around people, we don't want to be in a big group of people and all of us are smelly. It's going to be very hard for us to focus. If you ever sat next to somebody for a long period of time and he's very bad smelling, is very difficult and focus. So of course, like when people, any time people come together, we talked about this with the ghusl before of the other types, such as like Eid and also for some of the other prayers that we do together. These are all of the time for someone to do the ghusl, and the purpose of this is to clean and to make sure you get rid of any bad smells. And so in this also, the time for this, it starts after the break of Fajr. So from Fajr, once Fajr the adhan comes, this time if you make the intention for the ghusl and then you do this ghusl, then you have accomplished the sunnah for the ghusl for that day. Even if you work afterwards and come to Jummah, you still have done what is accomplished for you, or like you have accomplished this this task. And he says, وَلُبْسُ الثِّيَابِ الْبَيْضِ. And this is, of course, the wearing white clothes. And this is because the Prophet ﷺ, he said, إِلْبَسُوا مِنْ ثِيَابِكُمْ الْبَيَاضِ فَإِنَّهَا مِنْ خَيْرِ ثِيَابِكُمْ وَكَفِّنُوا فِيهَا مَوْتَاكُمْ. And so that the Prophet ﷺ, he said to wear from your clothes al-bayad, which is like the white clothes. And so this is of the best of them. And of course this is recommended sunnah in all times. And so of course like Jummah is like even more emphasized because it's a time that we should have the best of our appearances about us. And also he says وَأَخْذُ الظُّفْرِ, which is cutting the nails. And of course the nails need to be cut every 40 days, but before Jummah, this is also another highly recommended time to do this. And so like the nails should be cut every 40 days, as well as like the trimming of like pubic hairs and underarm hairs. All of these should be cut every 40 days. And this is something that many of the scholars have said is obligatory. So no one should be leaving themselves taken care of. And so then, taking أخذ الظفر is the nails, and then والطيب, which is putting on some type of cologne or scent, good smelling smells. And of course there's some other ones that are mentioned here that he didn't that are mentioned in like the shuruh and whatnot, and of them is like reciting Surah Al-Kahf, and this is like a protection and a light from him between this Jummah and the next. And that comes in a hadith, and also in kathratu salat ala nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So having like a lot of this, and this can be done in different ways. So however somebody wants to do this, my personal way that I love to do this is either reading something from the seerah or reading hadith. All of this will have kathratu salah, and it will be something that's natural. If someone is paying attention, they'll have a lot of salah if they're just reading a bunch of hadith on that day, or studying the sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ will be mentioned a lot, and this is one of the ways that someone can do this. And I've found that a lot of the shuyukh, they will a lot of times have their seerah class Thursday night, which is like that's the beginning of Friday. So like Friday begins, or like Jummah begins after the Maghrib. That happens on Thursday nights, we would say. And so like I've seen a lot of the durus they've been on this time, like sometime either Friday morning or like in that on Thursday night that are seerah. And like this is I'm pretty sure that this is the meaning behind that. So also in wayahrum. Shura, this is another thing that's important for someone to know, is that it's impermissible. يحرم الشراء والبيع بعد أذانها. And so like so that then at Jummah, that it's impermissible for people, and he doesn't mention this here, but I'm mentioning it like in addition, that's also mentioned in other books, that it's impermissible to buy and sell after the adhan for Jummah. So like there's the first adhan, there's the Prophet ﷺ, he only had one adhan. When he started up, he would have one adhan. And then the need was seen at the time of Uthman anhu, that people needed to be made aware of Jummah, so he would have an adhan before the other adhan to call people to Jummah. And this extra adhan was something that would be done typically before the time of Jummah to get the people to leave the marketplace and come to Jummah. And so this was a need that he saw, and this is something that is from his sunnah, and also of the sunnah of the Prophet is the sunnah of the khulafa. So if they did something of this sort, this is not, we wouldn't say it's a bid'ah or something of this sort, but it is it's something that is affirmed, and no one, like we wouldn't see the Sahaba doing inkar on him either in doing this. So this is a sunnah for someone to have that adhan beforehand. And so this adhan is not, there's no hukm for this, but the actual adhan before the khutbah, this is the adhan after this. All of the buying and selling is haram. It's haram to buy and sell. And so the people who do this, because Allah said وَذَرُوا الْبَيْعَ, and so like that they need to leave فَسَعُوا إِلَى ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَذَرُوا الْبَيْعَ, like go to the dhikr of Allah, which is like the Jumu'ah, the Salat Jumu'ah, and وَذَرُوا الْبَيْعَ, when to leave off bay'. And so anyone who does this, they're sinning in this time. And the madhab of Shafi'i is that this person is sinning and their bay' is sahih, and they're at them for it. Like they're sinner for them. This is the Shafi'i madhab in this particular issue. So if someone were to buy something, yes, they bought it. Yes, they're a sinner for that. And yes, the people deserve their money, and all the transaction, it went through, but they're a sinner for that. This is of course for the people that are obliged to go to the Jumu'ah. And then he says, and also of the other things, he doesn't say this, but in addition, is that it's makruh after zawal. So like after the time for dhuhr comes in, it's makruh to continue in buying and selling. It's makruh to do that and before the adhan. So if the adhan hasn't come yet and someone is still going back and forth, it's makruh, because the adhan could come at any time. So of course they should go to that when they know that time for it is there. And there's also a couple other things he mentions. وَيُسْتَحَبُّ الْإِنصَاتُ فِي وَقْتِ الْخُطْبَةِ. And he says yustahab. And so this is something that is preferred for someone to be quiet. Insat is like being quiet and listening during the khutbah, during this time. This is for the people that hear him or don't hear him. If there wasn't like loudspeakers and they're far, then they should be quiet at this time. And this is mustahab, and but this is not something that is like haram. And why does he say this? Like in general, we have the prohibition or like the command for us to be quiet, but we also have an instance where a man came in during the khutbah and addressed the Prophet ﷺ and raised his voice, and he didn't do inkar on him. So in this case, since the Prophet ﷺ didn't do inkar, this is iqrar. And this was of the examples of him asking for the rain. There was an Arabi that came at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and he came to him while he was doing it, and then he asked him to make a rain, and the Prophet ﷺ didn't do inkar on him and answered him and spoke back and forth with him. And also the Prophet ﷺ, he spoke to other people while they're in Jumu'ah. And they would respond to him. So it's permissible to have that back and forth conversation while someone is in Jumu'ah. But of course, listening to the Imam is mustahab, highly recommended. And someone could be losing out on the reward of the Jumu'ah that they would have otherwise while they're doing that. But it doesn't invalidate the Jumu'ah. It would just invalidate the reward if they were to speak and whatnot. Allah Ta'ala alam.
So, this question on that. So that is between you and the Imam. So maybe I missed something. But what if to the other people, sometimes people come give you salam?
The insat is over this. So like someone being quiet, even if someone does give this would be more emphasized to Allah Ta'ala. Yeah. Because of the directness of this command. And even like the fact that the Prophet ﷺ, in the hadith he says, إِذَا قُلْتَ لِصَاحِبَكَ يَوْمَ الْجُمْعَةِ أَنْسَتْ وَالْإِمَامُ يَخْطُبُ فَقَدْ لَغَوْتَ. So like lagu is like you spoke and you went out of turn, like you went out of town. So if you tell someone to be quiet while the Imam is speaking, then you are being a part of that problem as well. Then you have done that. So this would be like saying the salam to somebody would be similar to Allah Ta'ala, except of course the Imam. But this would be something that is, he says mustahab. So the person is not a sinner, but he would be getting rid of the reward that is there for listening. And this is what the reward is connected in many hadiths for the person who listens to the khutbah and doesn't do any lagu. Allah Ta'ala alam. And so this is putting together the different hadith that brings it to istihbab instead of being a wujub. And so he also says, as other things here, وَمَنْ دَخَلَ وَالْإِمَامُ يَخْطُبُ صَلَّى رَكَعَتَيْنِ خَفِيفَتَيْنِ ثُمَّ يَجْلِسُ. And he says, and whoever enters while the imam is giving the khutbah, then he prays 2 rakas خَفِيفَتَيْنِ. Why is it khafifatain, which is like light rakas, like very quick? Of course, there's a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ was giving khutbah, and someone came in at this time while he was giving khutbah, and then he sat down right away. And of course, you would think if the khutbah is supposed to be listened to, then me praying during the khutbah is me turning away from what the khatib is saying, and I'm doing something other than that. So, but the Prophet ﷺ, he said to him, Ya Sulayk, because this is the name of the Sahabi, Qum farka' rakatain, watajawaz fihima. And so then the Prophet ﷺ, he said to him to get up and pray 2 rak'atain, and like to pray the 2 rak'ahs, and watajawaz fihima. Watajawaz means like to be quick about it, and like don't lengthen anything. And so if someone is praying this, he should not be lengthening any of it, because this lengthening, and like even if he's trying to do extra khushu' in his salah and making sure that he's getting all the dua, this is i'rad anil imam. So like the person is doing this, he's turning away from the imam and busying himself with something that isn't called for him to do. What he's called for is to listen to the imam. And another mistake that some people will make is they come in during the adhan and they listen to the adhan while they're standing, and they repeat the adhan, and then once the imam starts speaking, they pray their 2 rakahs. This is a mistake here, because of course listening to the imam is first and foremost. Then listening to if you're gonna pick between the adhan and the imam, it's mujma upon, like there's ijma' that repeating the adhan is sunnah. There's ijma' here. This is sunnah. There's no obligation for this, and since there's ijma' in this, of course we know that this is sunnah. But if it's gonna take away from something that is either wajib or very, very highly recommended, of course we put this aside and we do this thing that is sunnah, and we prioritize listening to the imam. So someone should never, if they come in at that time when the person's giving the adhan, they should pray right away and sit down so that they don't miss anything from the imam. And this is a mistake. Many people, they think they're doing the sunnah by repeating the adhan, but the more important sunnah here is the actual listening to the imam. And then he would sit after this. And so this is some of the things that is mentioned here. And also the Prophet ﷺ, he says, إِذَا جَاءَ أَحَدُكُمْ يَوْمَ الْجُمْعَةِ وَالْإِمَامُ يَخْطُبُ فَلْيَرْكَعْ رَكْعَتَيْنِ وَلْيَتَجَوَّزْ فِيهِمَا. And so this is also another important, like this hadith emphasizes the importance of praying 2 rakahs before sitting. And you can see this even at a time when the khatib is given on the khutbah, when we should listen, and still we're commanded with these 2 rakahs before sitting. This is of some of the evidences that the people that say that this is obligatory, they will use this. They'll say this is of the evidences that shows that the tahiyyat al-masjid wajibah. And so like this is of the evidence. Of course, like we have other evidences that pulls away from that, but we could say that it's at least very, very, very highly recommended when it comes into a place where it should be done while the imam is giving the khutbah. Wallahu ta'ala. Any questions about what we're going over here?
Can you explain further what do you mean by niyyah? They have to have a niyyah, jama'ah?
When somebody, for the salat, at the beginning of the salat, the first of the arkan is what? Niyyah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this niyyah is composed of certain things. One is that the salat, if it's obligatory, needs to be obligatory. And here, it also needs to be combined with that niyyah, is that they're praying jama'ah. They're praying in congregation. Because the Salatul Jumu'ah لا تصح إلا بجماعة. So they have to have the niyyah that they're being led in salah, or like that this is a salah that is jama'ah. They need to have this, and that they're praying in congregation, being led. Without this, there's no Jumu'ah without the jama'ah.
And would this apply for the ajr of like a normal jama'ah?
For the person, we talked, I think in the last class we talked a little bit about the person who's being led by someone else. He has to have the intention that he's being led by that person. If he doesn't have this intention and he follows their actions without having the intention that he's being led by them in salah, his salah is tabtul salatu. So like his salah is batila. If he follows somebody else, if he connects his actions with somebody else and he didn't have the intention to be led by them, then this breaks the salah. And this can the niyyah should be at the beginning of the salah when someone is doing it. But of course there's a, for a regular, say someone is praying asr and they start off the salah and then they see someone else praying asr and they want to join in, they can join in But if they are planning to be with that person, they need to have the niyyah at the time that they start with that. And especially for Jumu'ah, it has to be at the time that they start. That niyyah, which is the first of those things, it needs to be that it's congregational. Of course, like, this is not something we need to overthink. It's normal that we'd be praying and following somebody. We don't necessarily have to think about all of these things. But if someone had, didn't have even that, they're not praying with the congregation. And this is the topic of niyyah. Occasionally, it can be a door where it opens up west-west that has no end. So, of course, be mindful of that. But normally, like the normal person, when they pray and they stand with all the people and they see the imam, they wait for him. He says Allahu Akbar and they say Allahu Akbar. Normally, their intention is there. This is what's to be expected.
So I noticed about the intention thing, right? I'm not sure which was exact, but in the subcontinent, the brothers there, they actually stated their intention.
تلفظ بالنيات مستحب عندنا. And this is mustahab in the Shafi'i. A lot of the Shafi'i, they will say that this is mustahab, to say the intention out loud, because it helps to make sure that they have their intention. So ما لا يتم الواجب إلا به فهو واجب. ما يساعد, like the thing that helps someone accomplish something that's wajib, mustahab. So this is the view of that. So if the answer to this is, does this actually help them with their niyyah? Does it? Like some people, they will stand up and they'll say صلي صلاة الفريضة الظهر ركعتين قصرا. However they say, I don't know exactly, but they'll say this. But if their mind is not there, this doesn't do anything for them. This niyyah is not niyyah. The niyyah is inside. Everyone's agreed that the niyyah is in the heart. And so even if they say something and they make a mistake in what they say, or they say the right thing and they make a mistake in what they intended, everything goes back to their intention. So this is very popular in the Shafi'i madhab. And because this is something that if it helps them with their niyyah, which is obligatory, and it helps them with that, then this is something that's sunnah. But I would shy away from ever saying the word sunnah, just because of the ishtirak. Because this is also, like, sunnah is something that we have guidance from the Prophet ﷺ to do in a general, and like in some type of way. And this is kind of far. It's kind of far. Allah Ta'ala. Any other questions?
It can be in any other language, right?
The intention? Or the khutbah?
No, the intention.
The intention can be, it's whatever. It's the point of it is to help the person with their niyyah. This istihdar al-niyyah. Of course, this actually, the whole point of this actually opens up a door that goes against the actual intention. Like this whole talaffuz bin niyyah, it opens up a door to questioning their niyyah more than they would otherwise. Wallahu ta'ala. But this, I don't personally encourage people to do this. But this is something that's known in the madhab, and now you know the reason why they say that. Anything that helps you accomplish something that's obligatory is mustahab. Of course, if you weren't able to do something that's obligatory without it, then you would say, okay, it's wajib. But here it's something that helps, so it'd be mustahab. Any other questions? And I think we'll call it for today. وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.
فلذلك فادع واستقم كما أمرت ولا تتبع أهواءهم وقل آمنت بما أنزل الله من كتاب وأمرت لأعدل بينكم الله ربنا وربكم لنا بيننا وبينكم الله يجمع بيننا وإليه المصير.